So thank you for joining me once again for this composition study series. We are actually going to look at part 2 of Arrival. We're going to evaluate another 8 frames here. So let's just get right into it. The first frame that I wanted to take a look at is at 51 minutes and 48 seconds. So we're going to slide this down here to 51:48. And what I liked about this, we're almost there. Here it is. What I liked about this is, as Luisa's this is like her future daughter walking through the field, the vertical lines are created by like the tall grass that surround her. And it's just symmetry that feels really good. Someone might even describe it as like, leading lines that are pointing to her. They kind of highlight her, being in the center of the screen here. And if I go ahead and turn on this overlay here, and let's go ahead and change this to a 0.25, and let's also scale this times 3. You can just kind of see how, using this as a guide really helps with the overall symmetrical feeling of this shot. So let's go ahead and look at the next frame. We're looking at, let me go ahead and turn this overlay off. The next one is at 52 minutes and 58 seconds here. So let's scooch to this one. And I believe we're going to be just looking at the phi grid here. Let's hit play on this, 52, just about there. Let's go ahead and turn the phi grid on here. Let's reset to defaults here and just turn this on. This is just the golden ratio in full effect here. That top horizontal line lands perfectly on the hilltops in the background. And it just feels good. It looks nice. This kind of just grabbed my attention. So moving right along, let's go ahead to the next one, which will be at 54 minutes and 30 seconds here. So let's go ahead and slide this. Let's hit play here and get it there. 28, 29, 30. Again, let's go ahead and turn this off. This is just an interesting use of curves. Now, this is direct related to the language that the heptapods are speaking. And this is like one of their ink drawings that they've created. Again, it's just, the curves. Curves always feel good, at least to me. They always feel kind of nice here. And if I go ahead and put on the spiral here, let's turn this on and let's just mirror this and flip this. Here we have a nice representation of a curve within this shot. Again, it just feels good. It looks interesting. And I believe that they chose this portion of the shot just to kind of show the curve and to kind of highlight all of these interesting points that are scattered throughout this portion of this script or this writing. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next shot, which is at 56 minutes and 4 seconds here. We're going to scooch this over. 56:04. In this scene, 56:04, we have both Luis and Jeremy Renner's character talking to one another. Let's go ahead and hit play here. 56:04. I'm going to turn this off here. Now, what's interesting here is just there's this sight line between the two of them here. And if I go ahead and make sure that everything is reset to default here, I want to put dynamic symmetry on and turn this on here, and it just follows this diagonal very nicely here. If I go ahead and I scooch this over and offset it in the X direction here, you see the sight line lands perfectly on this diagonal. Again, this is the root 5 rectangle. I want to have this mirrored here. Let me go ahead and mirror this back here. I'm going to actually come back and reset this, and you'll see that this lands perfectly between Luis's sight line here and Jeremy's sightline, or his character's sightline. So again, the use of dynamic symmetry, the use of diagonals in this shot is evident to me. And it's just, again, something to keep in consideration when you're laying out your shots, using these sort of diagonals to help with your storytelling. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next shot. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and we're going to scooch to 57 minutes and 14 seconds, which is still part of this conversation that these two characters are having with one another. 5714. Let me hit play on this. And this shot in and of itself is, oh, actually, let me go back just a little bit here. Sorry about that. Let me hit play here. So in this shot, I just love the framing that Bradford used in many of his side profiled close-up shots. You know, the eyes and the nose and the mouth are typically bound by this triangle here. And if I go ahead and turn on dynamic symmetry here, and let's go ahead and turn on the opacity to 0.5 here, you can see how Luis's face here is bound by this triangle, as well as he often had the profile of the characters staring to the closest side of the frame. And this just generally when you have characters that are staring into the side of the frame that's closest to them, as opposed to them being on the furthest side, it brings about a sense of mystery and wonder, as opposed to when they're on the left side of the frame, you can more clearly see what it is that they're looking at. When they're on the side of the frame that's closest to their face, you kind of wonder what exactly are they looking at, you know, what is of interest over there. It just brings about a little bit more tension. Now we know that in this particular scene that Luis is looking at Jeremy Renner's character on the other side, but I just noticed, and I'll also show this in a few other frames as well, where he does this consistently throughout the film. And again, I think it's to bring about a little bit of tension, a little bit of mystery into what that character may or may not be looking at. And again, here with the triangles here, it just frames her face very nicely. And again, I will show this in a couple other frames as well. So let's move on to the next shot. Let's go ahead and turn this off. And let's go to, again, another portion of this conversation, 5722, and not too much further down here. I'm going to go ahead and hit play here. This actually demonstrates it right here. This is just a symmetrical shot. You know, it's a balanced conversation between Lewis and Jeremy Renner's character. His name is actually Ian. Let's go ahead and put on this overlay here, which just kind of shows this really sort of balanced symmetry between the two of these characters. They're on opposite sides. They're pretty far away from one another. Their eye levels are the same here. They both seem to have the same size. No one seems bigger or smaller. I think that this kind of gaping space between them is symbolic of like their future marital separation, which you kind of end up realizing as you're watching the film. That's just my interpretation. That's just my thought. But again, this is just a nice, balanced, symmetrical shot with these two characters that are facing one another. Let's go ahead and turn that off, and let's move on to the next frame. Let's see if we can get there. 34 here. Again, I just thought this shot felt good. It felt a little tense just because, again, Luis's character is facing the side of the frame that's closest to her. You know, you see that her face is very well lit here. And what I'm kind of seeing was a bit of a, like, either something that was rule of thirds, or, you know, something that could be attributed to the use of a spiral or the golden spiral. So when I overlaid the golden spiral on top of this, let's go ahead and turn this on. And I'm going to go ahead and change the opacity to 0.5 here. I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees. And then we're going to slide this over on the x-axis, and again, right where it hits her headphones is the beginning of the spiral, and right at the edge of this door here is where the tail of the spiral ends. Again, it was just good framing, and I think that we can attribute it to the use of the golden spiral here, or even if we were to just look at the use of a spiral itself here, the way that it lands on her headphones, and even though it's stretching and across the frame, again, the same idea. It's using this sort of spiral to position focus on Louise, what she's looking at, and then leaving the rest of the frame open. Now, this last frame, it's actually right after this one here, was a bit of a happy discovery here. I'm gonna hit pause right here. I think we're going to 58:41, right about here. I think it's where we were. And this was just kind of a cool discovery, again, with the use of the golden spiral. There were actually two perfect golden spirals that were composing this frame. And let me go ahead and show you how I kind of found this. I'm going to select golden spiral. We're going to turn this on here. And I'm going to move this along the X direction here. My point of focus was initially Luisa's head here, just because she's the character in the frame, before my eye started going to other brighter portions of the frame. But I thought this was really interesting here. If I'm starting here at Luisa's head here, and you follow this spiral around, boom, you land here on this script or this writing from the heptapods. If you continue around here, boom, you're landing again on the writings from the heptapods. And then interestingly enough, the way that this overlay works is that it just repeats itself along the x-axis here. But with this smaller golden spiral here, you can see right here, it starts with the fruit here and the food here, and then it just envelops this other script that's sitting on the desk here. I just thought it was a really cool way of highlighting the language that she's trying to decipher and trying to understand in 1, 2, 3 positions on the screen. And my eye actually followed and caught all 3 of these while I was looking at the image. And I just thought that that was a really cool way and a really cool use of golden spirals to bring attention to the language that she's trying to decipher. This actually kind of felt genius to me. And once you have a chance to sit with the image and just look at it, it looks very, very intentional to me. So that's it for part 2. I really hope that you're enjoying these studies. Stay tuned for part 3. In the meanwhile, check out my plugins for doing your own sort of analysis. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next study.